Welcome back. Today we're going to be studying about the keyboard instruments. We'll be studying the most historical ones, which include the organ and the harpsichord. We'll take you all the way to modern electronic keyboard instruments and how they are used. We'll also be studying rhythm today, how rhythm is notated, how sound is notated, how silence is notated. So be sure you read in your textbook pages 25 through 39. Thank you. On pages 25 through 27, you will find information about the keyboard instruments. Let's go ahead and look at some of these in more detail. First of all, let's look inside the piano. Originally, it was called a pianoforte because it could play both soft and loud. It could gradually get louder and gradually get softer. Prior to the piano, the harpsichord was the primary keyboard instrument besides the organ, and it could only pluck the string one dynamic level. It could not play louder or softer, or get louder or get softer. So when the piano was invented, composers were very excited that they could play a variety of dynamics, and it was originally called the pianoforte. Now we just go with the short version, just the piano. Inside the piano are felt hammers. And these felt hammers hit the strings. Thus, they can hit the string harder and make a louder sound, or hit the string softer and make a quieter sound. There are also dampers inside the piano, and those contact the string when the pedal is not in use, and it keeps the string from vibrating. But when you push down the damper pedal, which is the right foot pedal, it lifts the dampers up and allows all the strings to vibrate. Behind all of these strings and hammers is a metal or an iron frame. Originally, they were just wooden frames, but the composers wanted to be able to play louder. And when they would play really loud, it would break the hammers and break the strings, so they wanted thicker strings that had more tension on them. But if they were to pull this tension tight enough and make the strings thick enough to make the volume that the composers wanted, they would have broken the wooden frame. And so they started to reinforce the inside of the piano with iron. And now there's a full iron frame inside the entire piano. And behind this metal iron frame is the wooden soundboard. It's a lot like a string instrument where there's the wood that creates this vibration. All of the pianos have strings, similar to the harpsichord. They all have strings, similar to the violin and the viola and the cello and the bass. They have strings, and then the longer, thicker strings have a lower pitch, and the shorter, thinner strings have a higher pitch. There are also foot pedals on the piano. You have the damper pedal, which is on the right, which, as I said before, lifts all the dampers off the strings and allows all the strings to vibrate. And the una corda pedal, which is on the left, which makes everything softer because it moves the hammers closer to the strings, thus there is less distance for the hammer to travel, and so it can't get quite the velocity to create a louder sound. And on a grand piano, it actually shifts the whole keyboard and the whole hammer mechanism slightly to the left, so that instead of hitting 3 strings, it only hits 2 strings, and therefore creates a softer, more muted sound, similar to the mute in the brass instruments or the mute on the string instruments. This is the picture of the inside of a grand piano, the piano action of a grand piano. So when you push down the key, which would be towards the right of this slide, you push that down, it makes the hammer go up and hit the string, and the damper will actually lift off of the string so that it will vibrate. Then when you release the key, the damper will come back down and stop the string from vibrating. This is a picture of a grand piano. Grand pianos are used in recital halls and with orchestras. Now, if you have a piano at your home, you may have a smaller upright piano. It doesn't take as much room in the home. And some people actually have electric keyboards at home to practice on if they don't want to invest in a large grand piano. So click on the link to listen to a recording of the grand piano. This is the picture of a harpsichord. You see it is very ornate and very fancy looking because they were typically owned by the king or the queen or the duke or the prince, and it was only in the homes of royalty during the Baroque era and some during the Renaissance. The harpsichord often had two keyboards, and one keyboard would be set to pluck one string, and another keyboard would be set to pluck two or maybe even three strings. That is how they got dynamic contrast. So one keyboard you would play for a little while would be soft, and then they would jump to the other keyboard and it would be playing louder because more strings were being plucked. But again, you could not get gradually louder or gradually softer, and you had to change keyboards in order to get loud versus soft. So it created what's called terraced dynamics, which is what they had a lot of during the Baroque era, where you have either loud music or soft music, but there's nothing in between that gets gradually louder or gradually softer. And this instrument was not really very loud in general. It was meant to be played in the palace, in a room, a single room, usually maybe the ballroom, where the king would have a party or the prince would have an event, and they would hire the musicians in, and the harpsichord would be one of the instruments that would play. But it was not intended for a concert hall because no one would have been able to hear it. It would not have been loud enough. Be sure to click on the link to hear a recording and watch a video of the harpsichord being played. This is the action inside of a harpsichord. As you can see, when you push down the key, the jack, which is the little thing that you see on the bottom, you see 4 jacks on the bottom, the jack will go up and pluck the string. Then when it comes back down, a little lever makes it fall back so it doesn't pluck the string again going down. Above the jack is an upper rail so that the jacks don't go flying outside of the instrument. If you push down the keys hard, the jacks are popping up, and if you didn't have the rail there, they'll be popping out of the instrument. And so they pluck the string, but it only plucks one dynamic level. This is the pipe organ. Typically, pipe organs are found in churches and often in colleges and universities where students are studying how to play the organ. As you can see, there are multiple keyboards. There may be 4 or 5 keyboards. I play the organ at Collierville Christian Church, and we only actually have 2 keyboards there for my hands to play. Then all the little white dots on the left side that you see on the organ, those are actually called pistons, and you pull different pistons out for you to create different sounds. You may want a flute sound, or an oboe sound, or a trumpet sound, or a violin sound, or just the sound of the pipe of the organ. Different knobs, when you pull them out, will create different sounds. You'll also see that there is a keyboard for the feet. The feet will play different keys, and you can see that on the right-hand side. You still have black and white keys, and so your toes will play what you see in this picture as black keys, and your heel will play the white keys. Now, if you're mostly playing the white keys, you'll use your toes. But if you're going black and white, your toe will get the black key, and your heel will get the white key. You actually have to have special shoes to play the organ. You don't want to hear clickety-clack, and so you get organ shoes that have a soft felt bottom on them. Also, you don't want to have, since you're playing with your heel, you don't want a tiny heel. And so organ shoes have a larger, thicker heel so that you have surface area on which to play. In front of the foot keyboard, there are pedals. So you actually can push the pedals down and it opens up. There are shutters above in the organ area. And there are shutters that close when you have the foot pedals pushed towards the heel, but when you push the pedals towards the toe, it's going to open the shutters and allow more sound to be heard. So you can actually do crescendos and diminuendos on the organ. Click on the YouTube link to hear a recording of the pipe organ. When you put all of these instruments together, you get the orchestra. If you look on page 30, you'll see the listening guide to the Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra. In this guide, I recommend you only listen to the first 3 minutes. You'll get to hear all of the individual sections play, and then jump down to the 9 minutes and 41 seconds in to hear the harp in the orchestra. But in this, you'll hear first the full orchestra. Then you'll hear just the woodwind section, followed by the brass section, followed by the string section, followed by the percussion section, followed by the full orchestra, and that will get you 3 minutes into the recording. And then skip ahead to variation 9, which focuses on the harp. And the book says it's 9 minutes and 41 seconds in, but in our YouTube link, it begins 8 minutes and 50 seconds in order to hear the harp featured in variation 9. Now look on page 31, and you'll see the listening guide to The Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa. This is one of the most popular of all band marches. If you go to your local park on the 4th of July, often there will be a band there playing, and they will almost certainly play The Stars and Stripes Forever because it's just so popular. So enjoy listening to the version that we have on the YouTube link of The Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa. Pages 31 through 35 in your textbook talk about rhythm. So let's look more detail into rhythm in music. These are some terms you need to know about rhythm. First of all, on page 32, you'll see the term beat. And it is the regular, recurring pulsation that drives the music forward. So for example, in My Country 'Tis of Thee, we have My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. So the steady beat is what I was clapping, and that's what moves the music forward. And it keeps everything in a specific time frame. Now if you look on page 33, you'll see the term meter. Meter gives strong beats within patterns. So like if you have 3/4 time, where you have 3 beats per meter, per measure, you have beat 1 is strong and 2 and 3 are not as strong. So again, My Country 'Tis of Thee is in triple meter. My country 'tis of thee, which will kind of go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. So that's in triple meter. The next piece you see down there on page 33 is Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's in duple meter, which means there are 2 beats per measure. So, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb would be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So it has this beat of strong on 1, weak on 2, strong on 1, weak on 2. Then down at the bottom 33, you see sextuple meter, which means you have 6 beats per measure. So you see Home on the Range. That one gives you 6 beats per measure. 6 beats per measure sounds like this. Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play. So that's going to be 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 1, 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6 and 1, 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you've got the 6 beats per measure. Sometimes composers will want to make notes stronger that are not on beat 1. So they can add an accent, which makes that one note stronger. Or they can add syncopation. If you look on page 34, you'll see Give My Regards to Broadway, which is give my regards to Broadway. Give is on beat 1, and my is on the end of 1, but my is the most accented note, and so it creates syncopation. Give my regards to Broadway versus give my regards, or give my regards, but it's give my regards. So that syncopation creates an accent that is not on beat 1. Now look on page 34 at the tempo chart. Composers can use a wide variety of tempo markings at the beginning of the piece. For example, largo means very slow and broad, whereas prestissimo is very fast. It's as fast as possible. And so a composer might put moderato if they want just a medium pace sounding piece. And so it just depends on what feeling they're wanting. If they're wanting lively, they'll put vivace. And so those are just tempo markings so that you know if it's a fast piece or a slow piece. On 35, it talks about accelerando and ritardando. The composer may want to gradually get faster, which is accelerando, like an accelerator pedal on your car makes you go faster. Or the composer may want you to slow down, so they put a ritardando, which means to gradually get slower. Now listen to this recording of I Got Rhythm by Gershwin. The listening guide is on page 35. And the thing you will hear here is syncopation, which the strong beat is not on 1, it's on the and of 1. I got rhythm, I got music. And so instead of beat 1 having, where I snapped was beat 1, that's not the strong beat. The strong beat is on the and of 1. So click on the link and listen to this song, I Got Rhythm. Some songs do not fit in the pattern of 3 beats, 4 beats, or 6 beats per measure, and they have an odd number of beats, such as 5 beats per measure. The most famous song currently that has 5 beats per measure, or I should say one of the most famous songs, is Mission Impossible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5. And so you only have 5 beats per measure instead of an even number. So listen to this recording of Mission Impossible, which has 5 beats per measure. Starting on page 36, you'll be reading about musical notation. I recommend getting a hymnal so you can look at how these look in the musical score of something that you might be familiar with, and that would be the hymnal. On page 36, you will see the staff. The staff is the 5 lines and 4 spaces upon which music is written. And again, as pointed out earlier this semester, the higher you go on the staff, the higher the pitch, and the lower you go on the staff, the lower the pitch. Now, you may not be able to fit the notes you want on those 5 lines and 4 spaces. And so ledger lines were created so that you can have notes that go above the staff or below the staff. And so you can see a picture of those here. There are 12 basic pitches in our musical system. You can see on the keyboard there are 12 different keys between the white and black keys. And so you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then you start it over again. So that is your chromatic scale, and the first note and the last note were the same pitch. They would have been, say for example, C to C, and you've got 12 pitches total in between those two, that distance on the keyboard. On page 37, you'll see the different clefs that composers will use. The treble clef is used for the higher pitches, so the right hand on the piano, or for the soprano, or for the violin, or the soprano saxophone, or the flute, or the trumpet. Those are all using treble clef because those are your higher notes. And the bass clef is used by your left hand on the keyboard, or by the bassoon, or the string bass, or the tuba. You have your lower instruments will use the bass clef. The viola is the odd one out. It's not really high and it's not really low. And so they use what's called the alto clef, so that the middle of the staff is middle C. They don't want to read tons of ledger lines every time they play. So they use what's called the alto clef, so that the middle line is middle C, because they play a lot of notes below middle C and a lot of notes above middle C. But middle C is sort of the middle of their range. Here are some more musical notation terms that you'll need to know and musical symbols that you'll need to know. If you look at the chart on page 37, you will see the note values, and I also have them over here on the chart inserted in this slide. But your whole note is at the top, and it receives basically 4 beats in 4/4 time, which is the most common time. Then your half note, which is below that, gets 2 beats. Your quarter note, which is below that, receives 1 beat. Your eighth note receives a half of a beat, and your 16th note receives a fourth of the beat. Every note has a corresponding rest. The rests are on page 38, and you can see the rests on this chart and how they correlate with one another. Your whole note has a corresponding whole rest, which also gets 4 beats of silence. Your half note, which is 2 beats of sound, your half rest, 2 beats of silence. Again, quarter note, 1 beat of sound, quarter rest is 1 beat of silence. Similarly, the 8th rest gets a half a beat of silence, and the 16th rest, 1/4 of a beat of silence. You can also have beamed notes. You'll see those on the very right-hand column. So instead of having one individual 8th note or one individual 16th note, you can beam them together, and that's what you see on the far right side where you have notes beamed together. And you can also have dotted notes. You may want a note that is 1.5 beat long or 3 beats long. And so the dotted quarter note, the dot gets half the value of the note in front of it. So the quarter note gets 1, the dot gets a half, so now you have a note that has a value of 1.5 beats. The dotted half note, similarly. The half note gets 2, the dot gets half of that, which is 1, 2 plus 1 equals 3. Now you have a note that gets 3 beats. On page 38, you'll see a little bit more about meter and time signature. Most common is the 4/4 time signature. There's also 3/4 and 2/4 and 2/2 and 6/8. So it kind of divides the staff into different time values so that you have strong and weak beats that we discussed earlier. You can see examples of meter in the picture that's on the left here on the bottom of the slide. So again, 4/4 is the most common, and so sometimes you'll actually just see a C, which means common time. 2/2 is also fairly common, and you'll see a C with a cut through it, a slash through it, which also means 2/2 time. There are also meters of 2/4, 3/4, and 6/8, which we've discussed already. You may want to note that ties over the bar line. Say if you want to note that you want 5 beats in that measure for some reason, but you don't want to have to change the meter, you will tie the 2 notes together with a curved line. So now the note that you see there, 2 quarter notes tied together, now can equal 2 beats, or will equal 2 beats. And so if you can put the quarter note at the end of the measure and the other quarter note at the beginning of another measure, it ties those 2 notes together so that they carry over the bar line, and that creates this syncopation feel. No longer is strong beat on 1 because it's tying over beat 4 into the new measure. So tie just ties 2 notes together, and it equals the value of both notes combined. So when you put all of this together, you have the musical score. If you look on page 39, you'll see the score of Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet. What I have posted here on the PowerPoint is Beethoven's Symphony No. 5. And you'll see all the instruments are stacked on top of each other on the score so that the conductor will follow along and he knows who is supposed to be playing when. And you'll see treble clefs and bass clefs and alto clefs. You'll see staff. You'll see a staff, and you'll see different notes, and you'll see a tempo marking. All these things help the composer tell the conductor what the composer wants the music to sound like, so that they can create a musical representation of what the composer had in mind when he was writing a piece of music. Thank you for joining me today. Be sure to listen to all of the video clips that are on YouTube so that you can understand how the keyboard instruments work, how the different sounds are produced on them, and also so that you'll understand how the whole orchestra fits together. And also be sure you study the terms that go with rhythm. Thank you.